All right, those just joining, go ahead and go to week 9. Click on the check-in and submit your name. Hope everybody had a great spring break. This week, coming back in week 9, we're going to be covering loops. Also want to talk about your final app, which will be coming up here pretty quick. We've actually got 3 more weeks. And then after that, the 4th week, starting 4/15, you'll begin working full-time on your final app. The app this week will not take too long for you to complete, so I suggest to begin working on your final app this week, at least getting the foundation. Next week, we'll be doing pointers. Week 11, after that, we'll do reading and writing to a file. Week 12, we're going to be doing having fun updating a dice game and manipulating it to your heart's desire. Week 13, 14, you'll work on the app. Optional attendance those 2 weeks. I will be in the classroom, both sessions. In fact, on week 13 and 14, both, I'll be in class, and 15. Week 15 is mandatory for everybody to come in so I can do an app checklist and then present on week 16. Grades will be updated by this Wednesday. Make sure you do the check-in. Reading for this week is chapter 14 from Practical C++, and then a tutorial on CPP loop types for tutorialpoints.com. It's a really good tutorial on loops. Go over that. Example we'll look at in a second. Assignment is doing a gas mileage assignment, how much gas mileage you would get on different trips using loops. Review questions from chapter 14, Practical C++, and discussion. What is your final app idea? This is for everybody to see and discuss and give feedback on your app idea. So let's go back to the loop tutorial first. Then I'm going to do the exercise example to help you with this week's assignment. So on the C++ loop types tutorial, good launching board for iterations in your code that need to be executed over and over again a number of times. Generally, these executions are sequential. So you'll have something like enter in a quantity, enter in a value, and it might calculate, it might add, it might subtract. All programming languages have different loops and control structures for loops, just like C++ does. And so basically what you're doing in a loop structure, as this diagram shows, is you have a argument, we'll say, to be simplistic, and depending on the condition of that argument, if it's true or false, if it's true, might do some conditional code and come back and loop around and do it all over again. The conditional code might be something like hit Y or enter Y to continue, enter Y to play the game again, enter Y to enter in a new item, would be this loop here, true. Enter N or -1 to end the session, and then exit the loop. So all languages have this type of iteration, and C++ being no exception there. Different types of loops you can do in your coding. One is a while loop. This repeats a statement or a group of statements while a given condition is true. So while while input is equal to Y, uppercase or lowercase, the loop is going to continue. While date is before 1/30/2019, it's going to continue adding calendar dates to January. For loop executes a sequence of statements multiple times and abbreviates the code that manages a loop variable. And a for loop, a lot of times, for, like, say, an example, I equals 1, it'll increment each time until I reaches 100. On a do while loop, like a while statement, except it tests a condition at the end of a loop body. And then nested loop, you can use one or more of the loop inside another loop, like a while loop, a for loop, or a do while loop. When it comes to control statements inside a loop, as far as changing execution from its normal sequence, when you execute a leave sequence, it leaves a scope and all of the objects that are created are destroyed. First one is a break statement. It terminates a loop or a switch statement. It's used mostly in a switch statement, but it is used in loops as well. And transfers execution to the statement immediately following the loop or switch. Conditional statement causes the loop to skip the remainder of its body and immediately retest its condition prior to reiteration. And then go-to statement, it's called a label basically years ago. It's a label line on your code that jumps to a statement or jumps to a label or a line somewhere in your application. Go-to statements are not advised, but they're still used in programs, and there's no reason why they can't be used when you need to use them. An example of using a go-to statement is if you have a really, really long function in an application and you're testing, say, I don't know, we'll say it's 1,500 lines of code in that function. And let's say you're looking for multiple product lines. You're testing for multiple product lines in that function. Let's say there's 100 product lines. When it hits the product line that you've purchased, it then goes to a go-to statement that exits and goes to the last of the function that maybe grabs the category, the price, the quantity, and then exits that function. That'd be a good example of a go-to statement. Infinite loop, this is a loop that is condition never becomes false. The for loop is traditionally used for this purpose. Since none of the three expressions from the for loop are required, you can make an endless loop by leaving a conditional expression empty, as this one does here. Continually printing, the loop will run forever. The loop will run forever. You've got to be careful on an infinite loop, especially depending on what you have in that loop. It can lock up your computer because it can take up a lot of processing power. That might be it on the loops. Yeah, this is talking more on the if statements, if else statements, switch statements. Might be a good idea to focus on the switch statements. Switch statements are used a lot, are pretty powerful in programming, maybe not used enough in programming. We'll see here if we can get a example here of a switch statement. In fact, I think I went a little too farther back. That one, there we go. Yeah, doesn't have an example here, but you've seen the switch statement already. But switch statements are basically, you need to be used more in applications. I think it can be real powerful as far as criteria, because in a switch statement, you don't have to satisfy a whole variable. It could be a start of a word. It could be the start of a sentence. It could be the start of a part ID, something like that that could catch the switch statement. So anyway, this whole website, by the way, tutorial points on C++ is a good reference. That's why I put it in there. Now let's go over the example in this week. So this is a loop example calling break out of the loop. And in it, the main here, I've got a item quantity that's an unsigned integer, declare it as a initialize at 0, then a item total double 0, subtotal 0, that's a double as well, and have the user enter in a quantity, integer, in parentheses an integer, and -1 to quit. Then it takes that value quantity or declares quantity, and whatever the user puts in the CN puts it into that double. So since it's a double, it can be a decimal. While quantity is not equal to -1, they can continue on, enter the cost for that first quantity, double only. And here's the cost for it. Enter the cost. Then it takes the quantity times cost, puts it into item total. Item total is also a double. And then it gives the item total is whatever that title is. And it goes on to item 2, item quantity 2. And subtotals the two together and keeps building it until the user finally says n or -1, and then when they do, it's going to say thanks for using the calc app. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it to look at it. So enter the first quantity. We'll go ahead and enter the quantity of 2. It has to be an integer. Enter the item cost. We'll do $1.35. So 2.7, $2.70. Item count 1 so far, with a subtotal of all items at 2.7, $2.70. Item number 2, enter item number 2, quantity integer, -1 to quit. We'll do 5 on this one, and we'll do $1.37. 685 is the total. 5 times 137. Item 2 count so far, and subtotal up to this point, running total is 955. We'll do 2 more. Next one we'll do 8 quantity at $10.37. Item total for this one is $82.96. Item count is 3 now, and the subtotal combining the first, second, and third is $92.51. The last one we'll do 10 items at $1,234.12. $12,341.20. Item 4 count, and there's a total as of now $12,433.70. Do I want to quit? I'm going to go ahead and do -1 and hit return. It says thanks for using the calc app. And so this is a while loop that we're using. While quantity is not equal to -1, everything's going to iterate over and over again. And so we could keep going to 100, 200, 300, whatever, to keep adding subtotal, keep incrementing the count. It would also keep summing up the subtotal until the user hits -1. All right, so it's a really simple while loop, nothing real earth-shattering, but can save a lot of time in programming, especially when you remember when you first started programming. You might take something like this and put it in multiple lines of code, and it could end up being hundreds of lines of code, depending on how many items you could have, versus, under 20 lines of code to do everything. So that's the example. You're more than welcome to play with that one. Want to go on to the homework this week. I'm not going to keep you real long tonight. Hopefully you'll spend some time on your final assignment after you get this assignment done. It shouldn't take you too long. This is lesson 9 MPG. You're going to write a C++ program that calculates the gas mileage. The program should ask the user to enter the number of gallons of gas the car can hold and the number of miles it can be driven on a full tank. It should be then display the number of miles that may be driven per gallon of gas. So an output would be enter miles driven, 20, gallons, 3. MPG for this trip, 6 gallons, 6.6667 miles per gallon, very, very low miles per gallon on that. Total MPGs, same. Second trip, 100 miles, 10 gallons, a little bit better in gas mileage, 10 miles a gallon. And total MPGs, 8.33333. So that is the gas app. You can, as always, add more to this app, make it formatting better, add more variables to it, more detail to it for extra credit. And then review questions and discussion. And then I want to go over those final app resources. So I'm going to go into modules and come up here to the final app resources. And just a reminder of your final app. Meet a real world need in your world. Comments throughout the code explaining what it's doing. If you use inputs, use validation for inputs. Have at least 3 functions. Create a web page using GitHub, explaining the app functionality. And here's an example page here you could look at, along with a link to the actual code. Click on that. This should work. Nope, it doesn't. It's dead. But it's a Replit. You can just click it to your Replit account. And then there's a screencast here on how to create a web page using GitHub to remind you if you've not watched it or you have watched it and you forgot. Once you're finished with your app or as you're working on your app, good idea to upload your files to GitHub. And I show you how to do it here. You basically just go to your GitHub repo, upload files, and drag and drop your files into the GitHub repository and make changes as needed. I'll go ahead and show you real quick how that works. It's nothing real hard to do, but some of you might. And you don't have to download the GitHub app, by the way, to do this. So I'm going to go to my repository here. I'm just going to create a new final app example. I'm going to do final app CIS277. And I always usually add in a README on this. You can just click on this README. And commit new file. And so now I have my, if you look at my URL, I have my GitHub CIS277 final app. And when I'm ready to upload code, I can then just come up here to the upload files section, choose files, or you can drag and drop files from your directory. And I will choose an example here. this event check-in one I've been playing with for this school. In fact, on this one, I'm going to just drag and drop it from the folder, be easier. I like doing it that way. Yeah, I click choose files first. Oh, drag them in that directory. All right, when I put my mouse over, you'll notice that little dotted lines. You know you're ready to drop it. And there's all my files, including the folders. And then I just hit commit changes. And one thing I always check, and I'll show you here before we're done, is I always check the check set for commits over here where it says 2 commits. Here's the first one I did on README, and then here's the one I just showed you. And what you can do to look at what's happened is you can click on that title. It'll show you what you did have here, and the green is what was added into my code. And you'll notice initially all I had, that's everything in here. Dum, dum, dum. Go back one. And here you can actually look at the different code back and forth as well from that link. On the left will be what it was, and the right's going to be what you added or deleted. This here will bring you right to that unique check-in that you did. So if I go back to this one here, the first one, which was README, if I wanted to look at my code before I did this, I just go over here, and it would browse out to that repo at that point in history, and nothing else would be in there. Okay. So reason I showed you this, when you commit something to your repo, make sure you go back in here into the commits area to make sure that you indeed did commit it. And I always click on the title of the link to make sure and verify on the right the code that you just committed. It will be in green for items that you added. If you make edits, which you will, I'll show you what that looks like. I'll come in here and make an edit to a file. Let me get rid of that. All right. Back to my code. There's my 3 commits. And here on the left is what it was in red. That means I deleted it. And over here is what I overwrote it with in green. All right. So that is how to upload your final files when you're ready. I would start, whenever you get anything done on your app, even if you're doing in Replit, which everybody is, I believe, you can dump your code in here as well. And it won't compile in here, but at least you can keep your source in GitHub and see a running tally of all of your commits. And this will be the life cycle of your app from the first one to your latest one. Okay. And so that is it for week 9. If you have any questions, definitely shoot me an email. Make sure and start working on your final app. Like I said, this week, you should be able to knock out that loop pretty quick. Discussion questions, review questions. Just in a few weeks, we'll be starting full-time your final app development. So, all right, let's have a great week, and we'll see everybody next week. All right, bye-bye.